I call this Frankenstein meeting to order. I want pizza. Not that kind of order. Let's start by reading the minutes from the last meeting. Hey, where's Frankenbeans from Big Bad Beetleborgs? He's our secretary. He no show up. Remind me to fire that guy. Fire? Fire? Ah! I think I need a better union.
Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. The 5 points I articulate are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and for the entire month of October, we're going to have some very special Halloween reviews. Today we're taking a look at the nuts and bolts of the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Frankenstein Megafig. Starting off with the packaging, and you know, it's actually been a pretty long time since I've looked at a Megafig box. Now you might be wondering how DC could trademark the name Frankenstein when the book by Mary Shelley is in the public domain, but just like Universal Studios' Frankenstein is protected by copyright law because it's their version of the story, this one exists in the pages of 7 Soldiers of Victory. Flipping that box around and here's some artwork from it. I'm gonna level with you. Except for the fact that I knew DC had a character named Frankenstein, I know nothing about this or that comic. I just like monsters. I do have to say though, this artwork is pretty cool. For packaging, I'm giving DC's Frankenstein 1 whole point. Moving on to presentation, and Frankenstein stands at 9.5 inches, and at a glance is pretty recognizable as the Frankenstein monster. The ghastly green pallor, the stitches and bolts, the flat top with the black hair, all these features were drawn from the original Boris Karloff interpretation of the character, but those are all inventions of the movie, not the book. And yet every Halloween decoration and derivative costume comes straight from this. Remixed and reimagined just enough to be legally distinct and not sued by Universal Studios. This Frankenstein is a combination of Boris Karloff, the Incredible Hulk, and a marching band. Seriously, is he supposed to be a bellhop? In McFarlane's defense, this is what he wears in the comic, and I'll grant you it is pretty visually and therefore legally distinct. I think my issue is just how bright and stark it is compared to the rest of the figure. You look at the arms, for example, and there's a wonderful black wash in there that brings out all the crackly details of his skin and stitches. Even the denim has a black wash to it that really accentuates all that wonderful texture. There is texture in there, so I just feel like maybe a similar wash would have probably balanced everything out. Who knows, maybe I'll play mad scientist and do it myself.
Ah, so you'll have 4 other people do it.
Getting back to the pants though, and again, they are really impressively sculpted and painted, and all the different seams and wrinkles and straps of the boots are very nicely done as well. And I love the fact that in true Frankenstein tradition, they are platforms. Flipping around, the trench coat's a nice touch. As always, the leather texture is extremely well done. I like how he ripped the sleeves off to show off the guns, and we see more lifelike leather texturing in the gloves. McDonald's vest aside, for presentation, I'm giving Frankenstein 1 whole point. Moving on to posability, and this figure continues the limited range we usually see with Megafigs. As always, Frankenstein's abnormal brain-stuffed skull is on a dumbbell joint. He can look up this high, this far down. He's got a particularly good tilt, and of course all the way around. Moving down, he can raise his arm 90 degrees. No rotator cuff, but it does kind of float around in there. Bicep swivel, and single-jointed swivel elbows. That's double the swivel. For real though, they can only bend 90 degrees. At the ends of his arms, his monstrous hands are on McFarlane-style wrist balls wonderfully hidden by the glove. They can swivel, hinge up and down, or side to side. Move into the middle, and as is often the case with a Megafig, all Frankenstein has is a dumbbell joint. Honestly though, that doesn't really bother me, as it does a nice job of preserving the sculpt. Besides, thanks to the trench coat, he can't arch back whatsoever, and because he's a DC Multiverse figure, he can't really hunch forward whatsoever. He can at least do a little bit of the monster mash, including the Transylvanian twist.
Seriously, the Transylvanian twist joke again? This series is creatively bankrupt.
Below the waist, and Frankenstein has the typical McFarlane hips. They can kick out about this far, which is all I expect from a Frankenstein monster, but I am pleasantly surprised by the spread. I'm less pleasantly surprised by the amount of twist, and while he does have double jointed knees, the coat does get in the way. All the way down though, he does have toe articulation on his giant platform shoes. But as is often the case with Megafigs, instead of having typical McFarlane ankle balls, he has more Marvel Legends style ankles. They can hinge, and most importantly, pivot. Though it is pretty appropriate for the Frankenstein monster to be a bit stiff, the limitations that Megafigs have are pretty frustrating. For posability, I'm giving Frankenstein half a point. Moving on to playability, and Frankenstein of course comes with a trading card and a figure stand. If you're curious about the origin, it's the same as the book, except that now he's lived through into the future and is an agent of an organization called SHADE, the Superhuman Advanced Defense Executive. That's not all though. Frankenstein comes with a gigantic sword. As is usual with the McFarlane sword, there is still a little bit of warping, but it's not too bad, and the detail is pretty nice in the hilt and blade. Seeing as how Frankie Angel has two open hands, he can hold it in either one, but of course, while not necessary, interchangeable fists would have been nice. But playability is more than just accessories, it's also about how well your monster plays with others. Beginning with the very important Batman scale, and here we have Rebirth and 3 Jokers. But if your bat preferences are blue and gray, here's Nightfall and Hush. That said, for some of DC's other supernatural characters, and here's Dr. Fate from the Black Adam movie and from Injustice 2, here's Etrigan the Demon, John Constantine, and the DC Collectibles New 52 Zatanna. For some fellow Frankenstein monsters, and here's the Ultimate version from NECA, a 2011 version from Diamond Select Toys, and then venturing into the bizarre, and here's the real Ghostbusters, and Raphael from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. For another Frankenstein-like character from DC, and here's Solomon Grundy, and then for Superman's Frankenstein, here's Bizarro. On the subject of Superman, I figured in the spirit of Halloween I'd bring out the vampire version, and as long as I'm doing that, we might as well take a look at Vampire Green Lantern and Vampire Joker. For the only other agent of SHADE I have in action figure form, and here's Man-Bat. It's kinda like Frankenstein and Dracula. By that standard, I guess that makes the sickle-wielding Necron the Grim Reaper. But for DC's most famous horror character, here we have Swamp Thing. Though not a one-to-one comparison, this Frankenstein monster did remind me a lot of the Marvel Select Zombie Hulk. This of course is a bootleg, and as long as we're bringing up Marvel Select for a relative scale comparison, here we have Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here's Frankenstein with Stealth Iron Man. Hey, Hasbro, you know Marvel has their own version of Frankenstein, right? You should maybe, get on that. Maybe in time for next Halloween? Maybe send me one. Because Frankenstein is a big, crazy, generic monster, you could slide him into all sorts of different displays. Not only that, but I only now realize that that loop on his back is to hold the sword. For playability, I'm giving Frankenstein 1 whole point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. As a Megafig, Frankenstein originally retailed for $39.99, but as part of Prime Day, I was able to get this big boy for only $16.99. He has gone back up to retail since then, which is unfortunate because on his own, I don't know that I would have picked him up if he wasn't such a monster of a deal. Unless you're getting him for half off for price, I'm giving this Frankenstein half a point for a grand total of 4 out of 5. Do you read 7 Soldiers of Victory, and if so, what other agents of SHADE would you like to see McFarlane stitch together? Sound off in the comments below. For more 5 POA Ween videos, check out one of these, and come back for more Halloween videos all month long. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice, have fun, and stay spooky.